Hello, everyone. My name is Mausmi Patel. I'm the Assistant Director of Alumni Engagement at Georgia College. And today's live stream is all about financial planning tips for young alumni and really any alumni that are new to financial planning. So today I'm joined by William Black, who is a Georgia College alum and a financial advisor. William, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we get started, can you just tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Mausmi. Thank y'all for having us. I am a 1990, graduated from Georgia College State University in 1992 with a Bachelor of Business Administration degree. My major was in economics and I minored in finance. So 28 years ago, I graduated from, it was called Georgia College at that time, not Georgia College State University. But so yeah, I've been out of college. I started out in the financial planning and services business right out of school. So I've been doing this for a little over 28 years. Started my own practice in 2008, and I've been doing it under the name of WHB Wealth Management Group since then. And serving, most of my business has been in Baldwin County surrounding area for the entire time. So.
Great, awesome. Thanks so much for yes, no Bobcat, absolutely. So for everyone who's just now joining us again, this conversation is about financial planning tips for young alumni and anyone who's new to financial planning. So if you have questions throughout the live stream, please make sure to comment them and we'll get to those at the end. So William, I'll go ahead and get started with my first question is, what age should adults begin their long-term financial planning?
Yeah, I think you start as early as you can. Obviously, ideally you would want to start, especially if you're just graduating and you're entering into your first career job, you would want to start pretty immediately, in my opinion. And the reason we say that is really for two main reasons. One is the younger you are when you start planning and investing, the more time you have on your side, and you have to. It's not as hard to reach your goals. But in preparing for this, I kind of did a quick thing to show you if your goal, let's say hypothetically, let's say you have a goal that I want to have $1 million when I'm age 60. Let's just throw that out there. And let's assume that you earn 10% return on whatever you're investing in. Now I'm not saying you're going to earn that, but let's just say it's 10%. You would have to say, if you started at age 20, you would only have to save $179 a month to reach your goal to have $1 million at age 60. If you wait just 10 years, so like just say you say, I'm going to put this off till I'm 30, to reach that same goal, you have to invest around $480 to reach the same goal. So just by waiting 10 years, it's costing you 2.5 times the amount of savings to reach the same goal than if you would have started early. So the point being is earlier you start, the easier it is for you to reach your goals. And it also allows you, if you make mistakes along the way, that they're not as detrimental. If you wait till you're older, you have less time to recover if you make a mistake, or you have to save, in many cases, you have to, the amount you need to save to reach your goal is unachievable because you just don't have the resources to do it. So the second reason we think you need to start early rather than later is the earlier you start developing a financial plan and have a financial planning process, the less likely you are to develop bad habits. So starting early and having a good process and a good plan in place helps you develop good habits along the way. So there's no magic age. I mean, of course, if you're 30, you haven't waited too late, or 40, it just becomes harder. We see a lot of clients come in our office in their 40s and they're trying to play catch up. And a lot of times it's very difficult that, you can do it, but it just makes it harder on you. And there's a lot more sacrifices you have to make at that point because you developed a lot of bad habits over the years of not planning. So.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
A little bit better.
Absolutely. So let's say I have decided to start financial planning. Should I consult a financial advisor to help me through the process? How does that work?
Yeah. Of course, we always recommend, because that's what I do, we always, we recommend that you do work with an advisor. And you want to work with an advisor who's going to help you plan and not just say, okay, here, buy this product or invest in this, product. You want to work with someone who's helping you kind of plan and have a plan in place to reach your goal. There are some online tools. I mean, a lot of people work for companies that have 401ks. A lot of time online, they have with the 401k programs, they'll have like little planner tools that you can key in, like, hey, here's my age and this is when I want to retire. And it'll kind of help you and guide you. The problem with that is planning for the masses, and it does not take into consideration your unique, features and goals and things that you have to try to achieve that. I equate it to Googling if you're sick and you're having symptoms and you Google it and you key your symptoms in, 9 times out of 10, it's going to throw up some kind of cancer. And so you have this kind of cancer, that kind of cancer. And the reason for that is because a lot of symptoms that you have those symptoms if you have cancer. So, how many times have we Googled something and found out, thought that had some kind of terrible disease? Well, it was just a cold. So, so it's kind of like that. When you go to planning, you can put the stuff in, but it's kind of going to give you data that applies kind of rule of thumb data across the board. So a planner will help you kind of walk through the process so that you have a good process in place and kind of tailor that to your unique goals or your unique needs.
Okay, perfect. And what habits should I begin, or what habits should I get rid of to begin sustainable long-term financial planning?
Yeah, we talked about it earlier. You develop bad habits. The later you start, the worse those habits are. And I think one of the things that we see with people in developing habits are really, I guess the worst is like spending more money than you make or trying to go out. We were all there. We graduated, it was a long time ago for me. I just turned 50, so that seems ages ago when I graduated. But when you graduate from school, you want to reward yourself. And the thing that everybody says, oh, I need a new car. So first thing we do, we get our first real job and career job. We go out and we take on a car loan and start buying, you buy a car, maybe you buy something more than you should have bought. And we start right out of the gate. If you're not careful, you start developing these bad habits. So, really spending more than you should be spending based on your income. And so you start taking on small debts. And it's like, oh, no big deal. We got credit cards here. Start, charging up credit cards. And the problem is you don't have, when you do that, you don't have a budget. And so you lose track of where your money's going. And so that's the biggest problem I see, and the biggest bad habit, we call that, that we want to try to avoid. And so if you have a plan in place and say a budget in place early on, it kind of helps you avoid that. So you don't want to go to the car lot and say, well, I can afford a $300 payment, so that's what I'm going to get. You kind of want to go into it with the idea of, what do I really need here, and how much money do I have to save toward that goal? So that's the worst habits are really spending more than you make and not having a budget for your financial, for your income and expenses. So those are two worst habits I see. Good habits are having a plan, obviously, and trying to spend within your means and having goals. I mean, we have goals when we graduate, whatever they are. Maybe it's to, buy your first home. Then as you get older and get married, maybe you have children and you want to start saving for college for them. And then the underlying goal also is retirement. So you have a bunch of competing goals, and if you don't have a plan in place to achieve those, your bad habits can probably impede a lot of that, and you get behind. And you're sitting there one day going, man, I have all this debt and this garbage I got to get rid of, and I don't know how to do that. And so it takes a lot of work to recover from it.
Absolutely. And I agree. It's so easy when you first graduate and you have that real job to not really allocate towards budgeting. You're trying to spend money on different things, but it is important to start early. So that's a very good point.
You're bombarded with ads and oh, that car looks good, and we're a consumer-based society, so that's just that's the environment we have, and all of a sudden you go from you get that first job and it's like, oh, I'm making really good money, but when you put it in perspective of a plan, it may not be as much as you think. So you kind of go, oh, better be, efficient with what I'm managing and how I'm allocating my resources. So
Absolutely. And
that's the biggest thing I say, kind of warn people to stay away from.
yeah, and starting that budget is key to really open your eyes and see exactly how much you have to spend.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So what would you describe as a well-rounded financial portfolio?
When you look at it, first of all, when you look at like an investment portfolio, and I'm gonna kind of guard my words because I don't want to kind of give mass advice, advice to the masses, say, oh, you should have 60% of your portfolio in stocks and 40% of it should be in bonds or whatever. The biggest thing when you look at your portfolio to have make sure your portfolio is well-rounded or appropriate is make sure your investments match what you're saving for. Okay, so for example, if you're saving for a goal or a need, maybe it's a home or whatever it is you're investing for, and that you're approaching that in the next, say, 3 years, you shouldn't be saving or investing your money in long-term investments to achieve that goal, because the problem is if you're investing in longer-term, higher return potential investments that are going to go up and down in value. We just saw recently with the COVID and the pandemic, the markets, the financial markets did terrible the first 3 months of this year, and you just don't know when you're going to have those events that occur. So you shouldn't be putting your money in those kind of tools for short-term needs. So you want to be saving it in more conservative assets or conservative investments to meet those short-term needs. The second is you don't want to be investing in short-term investments, which are going to have lower return because they have less risk, to try to achieve a long-term goal. I mean, if your goal is 30 years from now or 40 years from now, retirement, you shouldn't be putting your money in to short-term investments that are going to yield you very low returns to achieve something that's 30, 40 years out. You can afford to take more risk in that situation. So first thing I would say is you want to match your investment strategy with the time horizon of your goal. The second thing is you want to make sure that whatever you're doing from an investment standpoint is just make sure you're diversified. The old adage, don't put all your eggs in one basket. It's very true. You don't want to. So you want to make sure you're investing in investments that are well diversified, have multiple types of investments in them, multiple types of stocks, cover all areas, stocks, bonds, all of that. So you want to make sure you're well diversified in the portfolio to reduce or eliminate the risk that, hey, I invested in all my money in ABC stock and it went out of business and I lost all my money. So don't do that. Buy ABC stock, but also buy XYZ stock. They offset each other. So be well diversified in your approach there. And that those two areas, if you focus on that, you'll be pretty rounded out and help you meet your needs on that. So.
And I'm assuming a financial advisor would be able to help someone figure out which way to best invest their money in a diverse way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a financial advisor is going to sit down with you and help you set your goals, first of all, and then help you match the investment program to that goal. The other part I didn't really mention, but it's the easy part of determining how you should invest your money is saying, okay, how long is it going to be before you need the money? So we look at what we call time horizon and say, okay, based on your time horizon, this portfolio makes sense. The more challenging part, and I think where financial planners and investment advisors really bring value to the table, is helping determine what your risk tolerance is. So everybody has a different appetite for risk. So it doesn't matter that, hey, I got 40 years of retirement and I can really be aggressive with this and make, have the potential to make more money. But if you emotionally and from a risk appetite, you don't like to see your money fluctuate a whole lot, where you may have to have a more conservative portfolio than your time horizon would suggest. So yeah, so we have to take in consideration, your personality and how emotionally you're going to react to market declines. And there's ways that planners can help through questionnaires and stuff, help determine, and help you even determine what your risk appetite is. Because the last thing we want is to have a well thought out plan and well thought out portfolio, but we get that part wrong and the market goes down and you panic and pull your money out and actually take a loss. Nobody wants that. So that part's a little more challenging, but that's one of the most important parts of getting it all right.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you. To everyone who's maybe just joining us, as a reminder, if you have questions, put them in the comment section and we'll get to those at the end. So my next question, if I'm a young person with limited means, or if I'm finally in a position to begin some investing, what would you recommend?
Yeah, so just starting out, the first thing I would say is you're not really ready to begin investing until you have the following pieces of the puzzle in place. First of all, you need to have an emergency fund in place. So you don't want to start investing, because when I say, and I talk about investing, typically when I say investing or I hear investing, that's a long-term plan or long-term prospect. So the first thing you want to make sure is you have an emergency fund in place. The emergency fund really is, we recommend typically 3 to 6 months of your living expenses, and you want that in some kind of savings or account that has really no risk that you can have access to real easy to handle any emergencies that may come up. Maybe new tires on the car, or the AC unit at the house goes out. You want to have something available that you can have readily accessible to pay for those needs. So you're not really ready to start until you actually get that piece of the puzzle in place. The second part I would have in place is I really encourage clients, especially my younger clients, is to have your small debts paid off. Like, if you have a car loan or if you have a credit card debt or student loans, we're real focused and disciplined about trying to help you pay those off as quickly as possible. The reason I say that is because it doesn't really make a lot of sense to be investing money when you have debt. So it's almost like having a bucket, you're filling the bucket with water, but at the bottom of the bucket you have holes in it and the water's leaking out. So you're putting water in, but yet you have this leak, and the leak is debt. So we try to, start with having an emergency fund and then getting some of these small debts paid off. And then after that, you have more money each month that you have available for an investment plan. And then what we would do is we would start investing in a well-diversified portfolio, as we discussed earlier. And assuming your goal is, say, retirement, I'm really big on like Roth IRA. So step one, put an emergency fund in place. Step two, pay off small debts, and then step three, start saving your money toward your goal. If it's retirement, maybe start putting the money in a Roth IRA, in some kind of mutual fund inside a Roth IRA to help you reach that goal. If your goal is maybe a 10-year goal to save money for a house, you do that outside of a Roth and maybe start an investment portfolio with that. But that way, you're saving and you're not really having the leak in the bucket, so to speak. You stop the leak, so now you're really creating real wealth in your financial planning process.
Absolutely. And speaking of retirement, what is the difference between a 401k and a Roth IRA?
Yeah, so you have, and I'll go with the similarities and then I'll go with the differences. So really, when you look at IRA versus 401k, they're similar in the fact that the money you put into the account is going to be tax deferred, so you're not having to pay the earnings that you make on it. You don't have to pay taxes on. With both an IRA and a 401k, you have what we call a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA. You also have a traditional 401k, and most companies now have Roth 401ks. So the big difference then becomes is how much you can actually put in. So in IRAs, you can put in $6,000 a year as an annual contribution. With 401ks, you can put up to $19,000 in per year. So when you look at that, it's like you can invest $19,500 in a 401k per year, $6,000 in a Roth. There you can put additional monies in if you're over 50. But for the sake of this discussion, those are the numbers. When you look at the difference between, say, a traditional and a Roth. So the traditional IRA, if you put in $6,000, and depending on your income level, you can deduct that from your taxes. So when, let's say, for example, you make $50,000 a year, you put $6 in an IRA, you're only going to be taxed on $44,000 because you get to deduct that. The same is true with the 401k. The difference is on the 401k, your employer is withholding that money from your paycheck, so it goes in before you're actually taxed. So hypothetically, if your paycheck is $1,000 and you put 100 of that in a 401k, your employer's you're only going to withhold taxes on $900. So you get a pre-tax benefit there for putting the money into the 401k. The money goes into the plan and it grows tax deferred. The difference between the Roth on the 401k and IRA, you don't necessarily get a tax deduction up front for that, but the money you put into the Roth, it grows tax-free because when you take it out at retirement, unlike the traditional plans, you don't have to pay any taxes on it. So let's just say you have $1 million in a Roth IRA by the time you retire, or your 401k, you could technically take that out and not pay any income taxes. Whereas the traditional Roth and the traditional 401k, because they allowed you to take a deduction up front, when you take the money out of that at retirement, that same $1 million, let's say, you would have to pay income taxes on it at retirement. So, you know, if you're just starting out in a low tax bracket, it makes so much more sense in many cases to fund a Roth IRA because you don't need the tax deduction. And I gotta just kind of look forward in 20, 40 years, taxes are probably higher than they are today. So I would rather get the tax benefit then than I would today. So that's typical. Of course, as I said earlier, every situation is different. So somebody may be in just a huge tax bracket and the deferral means more to them now than it does on the back end. So.
Gotcha. Okay. Absolutely. Thank you. Well, I'm coming up on my last question for William. So if anybody has questions, please go ahead and comment them and we'll get to those in just a second. So overall, what is the best advice you can give to someone who is just thinking about budgeting and long-term financial planning?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it a little bit on the budgeting process, and one of the things that I would stress is, first of all, have a budget, because most people do not have a budget. And the problem with not having a budget is you don't really know where your money's going. I mean, you know you got to pay your light bill and your mortgage and your car payment, whatever you have, but the rest of the money that you have, you don't really know where it's going because you're not tracking it. So one of the things we like to see, especially for younger clients, is the first step is to develop a budget, and I like to call it a zero-based budget. So basically what you do is you want to, for every dollar you have coming in income, you want to make sure you allocate it somewhere. So you allocate it to, you know, you've got your expenses that you have, your debts, your utilities, but you also want to make sure you're allocating it to the savings plan. You know, we want to see you saving 10 to 15% of your income. If you start out saving 10 or 15% of your income and keep it at that level as you get promotions and raises, you're going to be in pretty good shape. So we want to make sure that the budget that you have in place, we want to make sure that you know that, hey, when I get paid, this is where my money's going, and you go ahead and allocate it to those different plans. If you don't, like I said, you have money that we call leakage, and it's going somewhere, but you don't know where it's going. So if you have a budget in place and you're reviewing that every month and you sit down and go, okay, where did I spend money this month? And you're tracking that, again, it helps you create those good habits that we were talking about that everybody needs. So you kind of know where every dollar you make is going. Surprisingly, and you know, I'll say I was probably in that in my early 20s. Most people just kind of, they make money to have some left over, they put it in a savings account, but they never sit down and have a formalized budgeting process and budget their funds. And you know, if you think about it, if you're running a business, you're going to have a budget. So why not do it for yourself, and have it so that you know where your money's being spent and where it's going. That way, if you have the budget in place, because one of the first things I ask clients when they come in and we're doing retirement planning is, what are your living expenses on a monthly basis? And a lot of people don't know. they have no idea what their living expenses are. They're just kind of going through the motions. So the first thing we have to know what that number is, because, you know, whatever your living expenses are, that's the number we have to try to save enough in investments and retirement plans to have enough income to take care of those living expenses when you retire. So you kind of have to know that number anyway. So you know, I would go ahead and stress, if you're just starting out, the most important thing you can do is have the budget in place and know where your money's going.
Absolutely, I agree. It's a great way to see if you're overspending in certain places, then you can make those adjustments if you have a visual in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, you think about if you're running a business and, you know, if you come up in your business income, all business owners know, hey, I need to cut this expense or I need to reduce this. We should do that individually as well. You said it perfectly. I mean, sometimes you get and look, and go, man, I'm spending way too much money. What we call the latte effect, where you go into the quick shop when you buy, you know, drink, and you look how much money you spend over a week doing that, and it's like, I just blew $50, you know, buying stuff at the convenience store. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, well, thank you so much, William. I'm just looking at questions here. If anybody has questions, go ahead and submit them, and we will get to those. You've got some comments saying that the information was very useful. So, and I agree, because it is financial planning is a topic that can be very loaded if we don't have information on where to start.
It's kind of like a cuss word, you know, especially for younger people. They hear financial planning and they go, I don't want any part of that. Or I'm at a place where I don't have enough money to do financial planning. But financial planning is to develop a plan so that you have money. And so it's very important, you know, to do the process, even at an early age. I mean, it's one of the things you hate to do, but if you just suffer through it and get a plan in place, then you can at some point put it on autopilot and it just comes naturally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So it looks like we don't have any questions. If at any point our viewers have questions for William, his business is listed in our searchable directory. So you can find his contact information there and reach out to him. The Bobcats for Business directory is a great way for alumni to support other alumni-owned businesses. And it's a great way for you to feature your own business if you own one. It is free for all Bobcats, so feel free to visit bobcatsforbusiness.com to search for William or other alumni-owned businesses, or feature your own. But that is all that we have today. William, thank you so much again for joining us and providing us with a lot of valuable financial planning tips.
Oh, thank you, Mausmi, for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Well, everyone, enjoy the rest of your day.